Okay, in this demonstration, I want to talk to you really quickly about how you can make a front page for your WordPress installation. So this is part of the theme development, and a lot of people, did comps in their mock-ups that looked different than maybe you're going to end up having your basic template look whenever you get to the end of the demonstration. And some people might have a hard time making it look the way they want to. So one of the ways that's really simple, I shouldn't say really simple, but it makes it a lot simpler to create a one-off page that you can basically automatically have load as your front page, is to create a page called front-page.php. And that's not something that the tutorial had gone into, so I'm going to cover that really quickly. So if you go to codex, no, let's do that. Let's go to the codex, that's what it was supposed to be, .wordpress.org website. And it's all part of the same site. But one of the things you can do is go up here to search, and you can type in front-page.php. If you leave the .php part off, then you're not going to get the exact same search results. The very first hit is what you want, where it says template hierarchy. And if you click on this and then you click over on the sidebar where it says front page display, it takes you down to this section that explains the way that front-page.php works. And essentially what it's doing is it's going through the template hierarchy. And the way the template hierarchy works is that if there exists a page in your theme called front-page.php, then it will automatically load that. If that doesn't exist, then the next thing it looks for is home.php. If that doesn't exist, then it looks for page.php, and then ultimately after that it looks for index.php. So one of the things that you can do to create front-page.php is you could take any of these existing things that you may have already developed, whether it's home, page, or index, and you can just duplicate that file and then start working on it from there. So in this example, I'm just going to go ahead and take the index.php as my base starting place and work on it from there, since kind of in the demonstration, that's what you end up having as your front loading page anyway. So if I go into my, well, first of all, before I go into cPanel, what I want to show you is the way that these two things look. So this is how my template looked, just right off the bat. Now, if you're looking at this and going, hey, wait, wasn't that from a different assignment? All I did was I used the example Popper Scores theme in my tutorial for the my tutorial website for the first project in WordPress, and I just changed the theme to this Popper Scores theme, so that I would have content for you to see. So anyway, that's what this looks like right here. And then if I wanted it to look, say, like this, okay, then what I could do, if I wanted this only to show up on the front page, this little section that says enjoy San Diego beach life, and it's got some little SVGs that, do this kind of thing, right? Then what I can do is I can create front-page.php based off of the original index file, and I can make some modifications and then add some styles to my style sheet. So let's look at doing that. Okay, I'm going to go into my cPanel, and then if you were to look here at my cPanel, I'm currently in my theme folder, okay? And what I want to do is, you'll notice that there is not a page here that says front-page.php. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my index page and I'm going to copy it, all right? And what I'll do is at the end here, I'll type, let's just call it front-page.php. All right, and I can copy that file like that. This is one way of doing it, and then it creates it for you. And if you want, you could go ahead and use the code editor right here. The other option would be if you wanted to download that page and work on it in your own code editor so that the code editing features are better. That's advisable, but just to show you really quickly, I'm going to go over here where it says code editor, and I'm going to just add something so that you can kind of see what's happening. So if I wanted to say, like, before the post loop right here, before this happens, if I wanted to go and add something in here, I could inside of this main section. The other thing that I could do, you know, is I could add it even if I wanted, like, right after the header. So you'll see some different ways that that could work and what would happen. If I didn't put it inside of the primary area or inside of the main area, then it would have different, you know, different inherited margins and padding and things like that. So you can sort of explore where you would want things to show up. So for instance, if I just click right here, I'm just going to drop this down a little bit, and I'm just going to type some X's, right? And if you really want this to show up really well, what you could do is type it like as an H2 so that it'll be nice and big and bold, and it won't just be like little X's on the page. So we'll do that. We'll hit Save Changes, and again, this is on my front-page.php. If I go over here, all right, this is the one that I want it to look like, so I'm just going to kind of leave that. Let's just put that over here. Leave that alone. And now on this one, I'm going to go ahead and hit refresh, or I can just go to the landing page, whichever. And then you see here that it automatically stuck those X's in. And you can see that this is going to be the point at which, you know, the edge of this blue highlight is the point at which the content would start if I place it in that location, right? Okay, so it would start like with this margin right here. The other thing that you could look at, you know, is if I were to take this out, I'll cut that out, and let's just see what happens if we put it before the main content like that. Save the change. Okay, we'll jump over here and hit refresh, and you see that it moves all the way over. So one of the things that's really important for you to understand is if you want something that's going to go like 100% of the full width of this entire screen, then it matters where you put your modified content, right? So you could put it right inside the primary div, but before the main tag, right? So whichever one you want is fine. Now, if you look at this example right here, you'll notice that it's kind of nice and in line with everything else. It doesn't go all the way across. So in my example, I think that probably what I would want is to put it somewhere in here, okay? And one of the things you'll notice is like this becomes sort of a pain in the butt, like with tabbing and stuff. So if you wanted to do this, you know, in your local computer with Dreamweaver stuff, then that's fine. If not, you can use this editor. If you're not sure, like if you've been using this code editor the entire time and you're like, what, wait, I can do stuff in Dreamweaver and then upload it? Sure. You can just, if you want, you know, you can just download individual pages as you're working on them, open them in Dreamweaver on your computer, make your changes, and then just upload them again and overwrite the old files. Or the other thing too that I like about being able to use a local computer or local editor on your computer is that if before you upload your new file, if you wanted to go in here and like rename this as front-page.BAK for backup or something, or old or whatever, then you could upload your new one, and if it creates sort of like these crazy fatal errors, at least you still have your old one to go back to and compare and see what you might have done wrong. So what I did was I actually went up a directory to my main themes folder, and I uh, uh, compressed my Popper Scores theme and downloaded it to my computer because I would like to actually use a better code editor, you know, like Dreamweaver on my computer. So what I've already done is I've already downloaded that, and I opened up the pages that I want to work on. So I want to work on front-page.php, which I just made with all these H2s inside of the X, or X's inside of the H2, excuse me, and also my style sheet. So what I'm going to do, just for the sake of time, because you guys sort of all should know how to, you know, write HTML and stuff, I'm just going to paste in some information right here. That is my custom stuff. Okay, so I replaced those X's that I had, and in fact, what I'll go ahead and I'll do is say end of my custom stuff. Okay, and then I'll select that and I'll go ahead and put an HTML comment on it, and there. That way it's really easy to see like what changes I had made, right? And so you could kind of go crazy with this, or you could just put even just a tagline or a call line or whatever. And basically what I'm doing is I'm creating a div right here. And actually, I think one of the things too, yeah, I'm creating a div right here. And I'm calling it site highlights. And the thing that's really important is that if you give it an ID or a class, that you make sure that you give it an ID or a class that does not exist anywhere else in your styles. So if you want to call it something and you're not sure whether or not it might exist, you could do a quick search through the style sheet for the exact class or ID name that you want to call it. Anyway, so I created a main div called site highlights, and then you'll see inside of that I have some HRs, horizontal rules at the top and the bottom of them. And then in addition to that, I also wanted to have an H2 inside of there that says enjoy San Diego beach life. And then below that, I want to have these 3 floating sections. I could have done this as a list. I could have done it as a whole bunch of different, in some different ways. But anyway, so I made these sections, and inside of each section, I have an actual div that is empty, but it has an ID, and I'm going to give it a background image. And so really the only thing that these images are good for, or they're just decorative, I'm not doing anything else with them. If I wanted to have them as clickable or something like that, it would, you know, it'd be a little bit different. But anyway, so what I'm going to do is just have that set up so that I can grab stuff, images from my CSS file, and I'll just write all the rest of my styles here. The more complex you choose to make this, like where you're going to have to be getting the URL, you know, the more challenges you're going to have, just so you know, so that you know that. But if you want to just do like static, regular, custom stuff right here, you can. If you want to do dynamic things that are pulling from a different section of WordPress, then you can also go and look through your other templates and see like how other things get pulled, and you can modify those things too, whatever. Anyway, so in this example, here's what I'm going to do. And so as I mentioned, I've got a main div, and then I've got HRs, and then H2, and then inside of it I have these 3 sections that are going to float next to each other, and then divs inside of those that are going to have background images. And now, because these are square and the images I'm using are square, one of the challenges is I can't just use percentages, which is why I didn't use, I didn't apply the background image just to the section. That's why I created a div inside, and I used something that was pixel based. And the reason I did that was because with background images, you know, if you don't have content inside of the element, then the thing is going to collapse unless you give it a specified and specific height. And so to give it a specified and specific height that's going to always keep that square ratio, I ended up deciding to do it with pixels, and that also meant that I was going to have to do media queries. So let's look at how we would address that. Okay, if we go into styles, all I did was I went to the very, very bottom. Okay, and all I need to do down here is I'm going to copy where it says footer. I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to come down a couple clicks, and instead I'm going to put special, or my special rules or something like that. My special rules. Okay. All right. So that you know that these are distinctly separate. All right. And then you can come in here and you can start to style the content. Now, what I would recommend that you do before anything is, before you start styling it, is go ahead and let's just save this, and let's save front page, and let's just see what this is going to look like without even styling it. And I can tell you right now that I'm going to have some issues because you know, because I don't have my CSS set up where it's going to be placing the background images in here. So just be aware of that. But let's go ahead and let's jump back over here, and we're going to overwrite where it says front page. We'll replace this and we'll call it front page. Actually, before we do that, let's just go ahead and close our front pages that are currently open. All right, and then now let's rename front page before we overwrite it. We'll call it XXXX, right? So that we know that that was the one where we'd put a bunch of X's. And this front page is, you don't need, I'm going to delete that. You didn't need that. Okay. That was just something I was messing around with. Okay, so I renamed front page with -XXX. I'm also going to rename, I could rename my style sheet, but the thing is that I don't really have any styles in there. So, you know, I can upload it, I can rename it, and but I'll just go ahead and put styles old. Okay. Now, I'm going to go ahead and choose upload here, and I can select my files that I want to upload. I'm going to choose front page, and then I'm going to choose style.css. Well, I guess it'll only let me do one at a time. So let's select another file, and we'll go to style.css. Okay, so now if I go and click back to my file directory, I can actually go and look and see what it did to change this. So we'll look at front-page.php in the code editor just to take a look. And you can see that it has my custom stuff, okay? And then, oops, and then if you go over here, we can look at style also. Let's go to the code editor. And sometimes style takes a minute to load because it's such a big file. All right, and then let's scroll to the very bottom and you see it says My Special Rules. Now, what I'm actually going to do is go into my cPanel. Actually, I've already done it. So what I did was I went up a level into my themes folder. I compressed my entire Popper Scores theme, downloaded it so that I could edit it on my local computer because my editor is going to be better than the editor that I have access to through this code editing tool. So let's jump over here to Dreamweaver, and I've opened up the files that I need to make modifications to. So front-page.php that has all these H2X's, and then my style sheet. So for front page, let's go ahead and put some content in that's actually real content. And instead of you watching me type for a really long time, you should know how to do HTML stuff, right? So I'm going to do something that is sort of a sample module that is going to end up like looking like, let me show you, like this, okay? Right, so that it's got these little icons and then, you know, it scales down. And in my responsive mode, I don't have it going into these single huge pictures. I still have them as small ones, but it is still doing stuff responsively. And there's some different things that I'm gonna talk to you a little bit about now, because we're sort of ending up well, winding up the semester and we're getting closer to being finished here. One of the things that is going to be easier for you to do is if you want pictures and stuff, it's going to be easier for you to call those up in your CSS as background images than it is if you place custom IMG tags in here. And the reason for that is that calling stuff into the HTML itself, not into the CSS, but into the actual HTML, you're going to need specific functions to generate the pathways unless you just, you know, put a static pathway. So I'm going to show you in this demo just like how you can do some stuff that's basically pretty simple for static featured things on the front page of your website. So let's do this. Let's go ahead and jump back over here. And as I said, I'm going to just paste some stuff in and I'll explain what it is. So I've got some comments that says my custom stuff here. All right. And the other thing is I have a div, and inside of it, well, the div is called site highlights. So it has an ID of site highlights. And that's going to be the thing that sort of takes up the full width of the screen, not of the screen, but of this section that's inside of main. I don't actually want it to go the full width of the entire screen. I just want it to go full width of this main element that it happens to be inside of. Okay, and so inside of that site highlights div, I've got two horizontal rules that encapsulate the other content. An H2 that says enjoy San Diego beach life, and then I have three sections that I'm going to have float next to each other. And inside of each section, I have a div whose ID is assigned to something specific. Now, why am I doing that? Why not just have a section? Why do I have to have another empty div inside of it? Well, like I said before, because I'm choosing to show you something that's a little bit simpler, where you don't have to do functions with URL paths and things like that in the HTML, we can put background images so that these things have pictures. But to do that, the issue is that unless you're using JavaScript to figure stuff out dynamically, we have this issue where we've got the width and the height that we have to know so that a background image will show up in its complete form. Otherwise, if you have an empty, like I don't have, see, that's not empty, that has content in it. But if I don't have that content in there, the problem with using background images, right, is that the element, its parent element, is going to collapse because an element is only as tall as it needs to be for its content. So we would have to specify a height. And because I'm using square images, I need the height and the width to be the same. Because of screen dimensions, I can't just use percentages, right? Because then I won't ever know if it's based on the percentage of the width. I'm not going to know how high it's supposed to be, right? Because the width and the height on a browser are not tied together, right? They can be totally different proportions. So what I'm doing instead is where it says FP icon 1 and icon 2 and icon 3 on these divs, right here is I am going to apply a background image to those, and those are going to be pixel dimensions. So fixed pixel dimensions that look good on almost all the browser's dimensions, right? And then inside of, or those are going to be inside of a section. The section I can give a percentage width so that it will scale proportionally to the screen, even if the image itself doesn't scale, its placement will. Okay, so let's take a look at what I mean by that. If you want to jump back over here really quickly. All right, in this example, you see that as I scale, the picture size doesn't change, but the placement of the pictures do. So that's because this, like picture of this tree and the sandals and the pail, those are the FP icon 1 ID, FP icon 2 ID, FP icon 3 IDs. Those are divs that are inside of sections that are percentages. The sections are saying be 33% of its parent container. And once the parent container gets to a place it has to start scaling, you see that they get smaller and smaller until they start to get too close to each other. And then I have a media query kick in. And again, the sections are still 33%, but the divs now in my media query, they're smaller, right? So they're like 150 pixels squared. Now they're 100 squared and or something like that. All right, so it gives you some sense of how that's working. All right, so now what I've got, if I go back to Dreamweaver, is I have this file. I've got my stuff saved here. And then you'll also notice I have the spacer. I just added that so that I could have some easily adjustable contents, easily adjustable spacing after the content. Okay, so I'm going to save this file. And I'm going to go ahead and upload it. Now, one of the things, well, let's go ahead and upload that file, and let's make sure that we can see it working. So we've got front page right here. And then if I go over to my cPanel, all right, and you could also be doing this through FTP as well. I can choose, here, let's close this up a little bit. I can choose upload, and then it will let me drag and drop the file. So I'm going to choose front page. And it's asking me, oh, wait, do you want to overwrite the last front page? This is where you could either say yes or no. Like if I said no, what I would want to do, I'm going to show you as a good practice. Let's go back to my file system, and I could rename this front page as front page old or XXXXX, right? All right, that's if I needed to know what that is. Now if I go to upload, I'll upload it, and I didn't overwrite my old one so that if something was really wrong with what I just put up there, I would always have this immediate backup to switch back to or compare it to, right? And so now if I want to go back and look here, let's hit refresh. Okay, now it says enjoy San Diego beach life. And you'll notice that, like I said, you're like, wait, where are all the sections maybe, right? Well, if I inspect this and I look at this, in my code view over here, then you'll see in the inspector that the stuff is actually all there. It's just it doesn't have any styling yet. Okay, so now we have to not only add styling, but we have to upload some images. All right, so I'm going to go over here first to my cPanel, and then over here in this local browser here, my Finder, one of the things that's missing that I don't have because I downloaded my Popper Scores theme from the server is I don't have the folder inside of it that I want to have those images. So I'm going to open up a new Finder window. On Windows, it would be your Explorer window. And I have this folder called icons and, oops, sorry, not icons, here. I have front page icons. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag that into, I'm going to move that into my Popper Scores theme folder so that now I've got them here in my theme folder. And I can also go over here and choose to upload. Now, but the problem is that if I want to upload, I have to upload them individually instead of uploading them as a package. So I only have 3 of these. I could either compress this whole folder and upload the whole folder and decompress it on the server, or I could choose, let's go back here. I could choose to just create the folder here, which I'll go ahead and do. I'll create a new folder and I will call it front page -images. Okay. All right, and so I've got now this folder called front page images. I can go there, and now what I can do is I can go to upload inside of that folder, and if I do a drag and drop, I can actually select all of them and drag them over, and it uploads them one at a time. All right, so that's kind of actually pretty nice. So I'm going to click to go backwards. All right, and so now I'll go up a level, and I've got my front page images there inside of my Popper Scores theme folder. So now the styles that I'm going to write will actually be able to access these images that are called Pale SVG, Sandals SVG, and Trees SVG. All right, so let's go back up, and let's look at our style sheet over here. I'm going to do it on my desktop because of the way that I can type better and I can see color coding and errors better. And again, I'm just going to paste a bunch of stuff so you don't have to watch me type. I will explain what I've done though. So I'll go ahead and save it. And what you'll see happening is we have a site highlights box. And what I will do to kind of maybe help this make a little bit more sense is I can do this, sort of push this off to the side, and then if we look at this example over here, you can kind of see a little bit what's happening. So I have my site highlights, right? And so what I'm doing in my style sheet is I'm telling it, okay, I want it to be 100% of its parent container, which is going to be 100% of the main area, okay, main element. And then I'm telling it I want it to have a height of 85 pixels because I'm starting responsive first. So, oops, so if we were to look at it like this, right, then, you know, we could start to apply some of these rules, and, you know, you could think of it the way that it's going to be like this. So anyway, I've got, I could also do, instead of a height, I could actually do, let's do min height. Like that, okay? And so I've got a min height on there, and where I've got margin bottom, that's just extra spacing that I'm gonna have for this. Actually, we should probably pull this out a little bit there. And then we have the site highlights HR, if you see where I'm highlighting with my cursor, and it says clear left, and that's because we're gonna have all of these little sections floating, right, where we've got section, section, section. Well, if we don't clear left for the HRs, then this is going to get sucked up right next to it, and it's going to do some weird stuff with the spacing. So that's what that's for. And here, let's close this up just a little. All right, and then for the sections themselves, if you look at each section, what I have is I tell it to float left, and I tell each one to be a width of 33%, and I give each one a margin bottom of something specific, right? And so these are all going to float left at 33%. Now, the div that's inside of them that's where you see it's a div inside of section, just like this div is inside of section inside of site highlights. Well, I can put common rules on all of the divs that are in section, like width, height, background size, cover, things that are going to apply to every single picture. But then if you look here, I've got these specific IDs of FP icon 1, 2, 3 with different picture files. All right, so you'll see that these will get picture files assigned to each one. And you'll notice too that the width and the height I have set in pixel dimensions, and that is because, as a reminder, I mentioned this before, that because there's no content inside of these divs, the whole div the container would collapse without any content in it. So we have to explicitly set the height and width, and because this SVG is square, I need to explicitly be able to keep the square relationship so that the entire image will show up with background size cover. Okay, so it'll be perfect. And then I put a transition on the height and width so that it would ease whenever the media queries down below will kick in. Okay. Okay, and then I also have this little spacer, this little div spacer, and it just allows me to adjust the height as necessary without having to mess with my individual HRs. And if I had ended up having any problems with the site highlights ID. And then if I scroll down, you'll see I've got all my media queries, and all they do really is that they change the width and the height at different breakpoints for the divs, right? So that the background cover will apply and it'll change the size of the background image, right? So let's see how that works. I'll upload this file. I saved it and I'm gonna now go and upload it over in my cPanel. So, and this is one of those things where you might want to, you could change the old style sheet, but because I didn't change any styles anywhere else, everything I did was down here in my special rules. I'm going to know for sure that anything that is now not working is happening because of the stuff that's down here. So I'm actually just going to overwrite this in this instance. So we'll go to upload. And I'll jump back over here to my Finder and we'll find my style sheet right there. Override it. I'll say yes this time. Okay. And then if I come back over here, I'll hit refresh. And you see that I have my stuff here. Now, one of the things that you might notice is that that's a really big space, right? So this might be one of those instances where I kind of overdid it. So let's just see. And I want to show you, how easy it is to then use this inspector and go find what it is that you need to change. So I'll look inside a page, and it's not in the header, right? So it's inside of content, and then it's inside of primary, and it's inside of main is where I put it. And so if I look at this actually looks okay. It's this goofy spacer that I added. Well, at some point I might have been adding the spacer for some other reason, but now I don't think I need it. So I can either just go change it up in my cPanel, which I could do. I'm not going to do that though. And the reason I'm not going to do that is to change it in my regular cPanel file, is because then I'm going to have mismatching files and I don't know what's what. So I'm actually just going to make a couple of changes here in my files. So if I find this div spacer, let's just go ahead and get rid of it completely. I'll save my style sheet, and then for front page, I can get rid of it here just so it's not extraneous crap that I don't need in my file. All right, so let's just get rid of this entire line. And let's save that. And now let's upload our changes and see where we are. I'll scoot this over again. Once again, I'll go to upload. Whoops, and I'll grab my files from here. So here I'm going to grab style, and I'm also going to grab front-page.php, and I'm going to upload those two files. And I'm going to this time I'm going to overwrite them both. And let's go see what my new thing looks like now. Now let's refresh. And you see now that looks better, right? So you can easily see how this will work, and the easing effect that I have on there is you can see that as I change it, the sizes sort of fairly quickly do a transition on them. Now, if you wanted real quickly to see what would happen if I did this a little differently, like for instance, if I took this and I took the width and the height off, right? Let's actually take the width and height off of all, and then you're going to see that it actually is going to create a problem, because remember, like I said, there's no content. I would have to literally go over here, edit as HTML, and add content in order for something to be visible. Here, let's add some spaces in there so that it has some line breaks. Okay, and then you see I start to get something because it's actually got content where it's going to show up. All right, so if you know for a fact that like you're just going to have a single word that's not going to throw off your spacing, you know, you could just do these in percentages with a like a textural background image or something. But anyway, this is how I ended up doing it just with picture files. Okay, so that should give you some idea of at least a starting place to adding your own custom content, whether it's just call out buttons. You don't even have to use icons. You could just style it with gradients and colors and things like that. And when I say gradients, I mean linear gradient code from using just CSS, which you can get on a gradient generator. Just do a Google search for gradient generator. So you can make these really interesting call to action buttons without even using pictures. Whatever. Okay, so let me know if you have any questions.